there's a calendar change, okay? So we're going to talk about the calendar. And so in Exodus 12:2, and that's, ironically, that's celebrating the first Passover, and we're going to be reading through those sections at the Seder meal, okay? So Exodus 12:2, he said in the month when they were preparing for the Passover, he said, this is going to be the beginning of months for you, which means it wasn't before. So here's what happened, is that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. What happened was there was a 6-month shift. In other words, the first month became the 7th, which means the 7th became the 1st. The 2nd became the 8th, and so on, okay? 6-month shift in the calendar. So, before Exodus 12:2, before they're in Egypt with the first Passover, you can decode different things based upon that. And so we'll look at that. If you go to Genesis 8, it says that in the ark, this is after Noah's flood, and it rained for 40 days and 40 nights, and the 150 days where the water abated, all that. It says the ark rested in the 7th month on the 17th day of the month upon the mountains of Ararat. Interesting. So it's the 7th month, okay? 17th day. So is that significant at all?
Yeah.
That would be September?
But no, hang on. Remember,
Okay,
there's
so
a
we're still
calendar.
working.
This is before the calendar
Right.
change. So what was it? 7th month for the Jews now would be the what? Remember the 1st and 7th month switch? There's
So
a
we-
6-month switch?
It'll be the,
First month, 17th day.
Yes. 1st month, 17th day.
That's Genesis what?
That's Genesis 8:4. Oh, yeah. So this is, if you go to Genesis 8:4, that's where Noah is in the ark, and it rested upon the mountains of Ararat on that day. Now, why would that day be significant? Well, if you know the feast, and I should make probably a little timeline here, the feast. Okay? Here's the 1st month, and then we'll say that's the 3rd. Well, I like the months are in between there. And this is the 7th month, okay? In the 1st month, there's 3 Jewish feasts, right? First one is Passover, okay? And then after that is unleavened bread, okay? Then, and we'll kind of see if you can pick that apart a little bit. And we'll be going through this a lot in the next section. And after that is, anyone know? What comes in
First fruits?
Yes. First fruits. Okay, good. First fruits. And then 50 days after first fruits. 50
Pentecost.
Yes.
Penta.
Pentecost, which ends up in the 3rd month. It's not always the same day on the Jewish calendar, and I'll tell you why. Okay? And this is Pentecost. Okay? Because Passover is always on the same day, on the 15th full moon. And then after that, you have 7 days of unleavened bread. Jesus represents that when he's in the grave 3 days and 3 nights. Why only 3 days and 3 nights? Why not 7? Because there's a formula. It's you figure first fruits after unleavened bread begins. You go to the first Sabbath, and it's the day after the Sabbath that first fruits occurs. So it occurs on different days. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It could occur the day after Passover, or 7 days from it, because unleavened bread 7 days. Okay, got that? So that puts Pentecost at different places, because Pentecost occurs 50 days after first fruits. So it just kind of shuffles a little bit. On the year that Jesus was crucified, okay, unleavened bread lasted 3 days, and then there were first fruits. And we know he was resurrected on Sunday. You know why? Because first fruits, according to 1 Corinthians 15:20, Jesus, our first fruits, is risen from the dead. All right? And basically, for that year, it was after the Sabbath, which means he was resurrected on the first day of the week, which was Sunday. So we know that for a fact. Okay, and I'll go over that more in the Seder meal. But if you look at this, what it basically means, as you put all this together, he was in the grave for 3 days and 3 nights, and then you have first fruits. He was resurrected on the first month, which day? 17th day.
Wow.
In other words, when the ark rested on Ararat, it was the first month, 17th day. So the same day that Jesus was resurrected is the same day that the ark rested on Ararat. Okay? So there's a, probably, would you say there's a typology in there?
Yes.
Okay, and the ark, according to Genesis, okay, it was pitched within and without, on the inside and on the outside. You know what that word for pitched is? It's kafar, which means covering, and it's elsewhere translated as atonement.
Oh.
So the ark had atonement on the inside and on the outside, and it got people safely through the flood. It's a type of Jesus getting the Jews safely through the flood during the tribulation.
Wow.
Okay? So everybody kind of got that? And so, what we see here, it rests, it finally comes to rest after the flood waters. Okay? Then, I saw something else. All this typology is incredible. In Genesis 8:13, there's even a type of the rapture in there. We see the Jews going through the flood, and it even has a type of the rapture. It says this, and it came to pass in the 601st year, that would be of Noah's life, because he was 600 years old when he got on the ark. Okay? In the first month, in the first of the month, first day, first month. Now what would that be?
July 1st.
No.
No.
It's, no, in their calendar before the change, it was the first month,
Oh.
okay, and first day. What did you change? It's actually the 7th month now, right?
Alright.
In our new calendar switch over, and the first day, the day stays the same. So if you go to the 7th month, first day, anybody know what Jewish feast that is?
September.
We talk about it a lot. Yeah, but what Jewish feast?
Feast of Trumpets.
Yes!
That's what I was going to say.
The Feast of Trumpets. So what happens? It says the waters are dried up from off the earth. What Jesus saying in John 7:38? He that believeth in me, as the scripture hath said, out of his belly shall flow rivers of living waters. Now that water is going to be lifted up off that earth. And what day does it happen on? Feast of Trumpets. It's the rapture. Do you guys see that?
No,
Ask me questions.
What scripture was that? John what?
That's John 7:38. Jesus said, he that believeth in me, out of his belly shall flow rivers of living water. So what I'm saying is, right there in Genesis 8:13, I've never seen that before. I was just looking at it after Elisheva and Maureen had left. I said, look at that. It's got another one of those things, and I converted that. Feast of Trumpets, the waters are lifted up off the earth. They're raptured. They go up and, from the earth. It's the rapture. Kind of neat. Encoded way back in the book of Genesis, by the dates, if you understand them, is the resurrection day with the ark, which is the type of Jesus, coming to rest after the flood of judgment, and also the rapture. Why is Feast of Trumpets Rosh Hashanah then, which is known as the New Year's? Why? Because when does Rosh Hashanah occur? Our Feast of Trumpets? 7th month, first day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right here. What was it before the change?
First month. One.
Yes. First month, first day.
She gets it, I don't get it.
What is the first month, first day? The beginning. That's why the Jews say that's New Year's, and why they say that's the birthday of the earth. All the ancient calendars originally, when you go back in time, they all had what? How many days in the year? All the ancient ones.
363.
They all had 360. Were they all wrong? Remember, they're agrarian cultures. They have to go by the calendar, right? No, they weren't wrong. They were right. 360 days in a year. And then around 701 BC, it seemed like the calendars started to change. Because if they were off, they would have to change it, right?
They
Because-
changed because of Joshua. The day it stood still? No?
That's one theory.
Oh.
And it could be then. Another theory is it was during the time of King Hezekiah.
Oh.
When
Yeah,
he
that's
said,
right.
ask a sign from the Lord.
That's right.
He said, well, you know, do you want the shadow and the stairwell to go back 10 steps or forward 10 steps? He goes, well, it's going to go forward 10 steps. I could have this backwards. He goes, make it go back.
Yeah, he did.
And then that could have been the change. Because after that, it seemed like all the calendars went to a 365 and quarter day year.
Yeah.
Which they had to. Because if they were off originally in a decade, you'd be off 2 months. And if you're planting, you'd be planting in winter. You know what I'm saying? You can't do that. So in 701 BC, it changed. So it was a 360-day year originally. We talked about initially day. We're going to look at the day and the hour, and we talked about how there's so many different things and factors. 350 prophecies of Jesus' first coming, right? Even the exact day of one of the most important days of his life when he rode into Jerusalem, presented himself as the king, and that was in Daniel, we're at Daniel 9:25, okay? And after that, we talked about he was be from the line of King David. So if you have all this stuff on Jesus' first coming, what about his second coming? Because there's a lot more prophecies on his second coming than on his first coming. Mm-hmm. And that's where I'm maintaining. I wonder if he has told us when the rapture is. Not just, you know, it's going to be 2022, September 20, or whatever. He wouldn't use the, you know, our calendar anyway. But you know what I'm saying. So, and of course you talked about how in Acts 17:11, we're to check the scriptures daily to see whether these things are so. All I'm going to do is I'm going to present it, and it's up to you guys to look it over. Then we talk about 2 Timothy 3:16 and 17. People get scared when you get into the Old Testament. And all scripture is given of inspiration by God and profitable for doctrine. So that's why we end up in the Old Testament. Now, here's an interesting thing. We talked about scripture that might indicate a possible return date. Okay? And it's this. All right? Amos 3:7. Anybody remember that?
Amos what?
3:7. I know I've quoted that at least.
That God doesn't do anything without
Yes.
telling time.
Surely the Lord God does nothing except that he reveals his secret to his servants, the prophets. Okay? And then Isaiah 46:9 and 10. God's going to tell us the beginning from the end. Or the end from the beginning, I should say. So at the very beginning, he has told us the end of things. And at the very beginning of the Bible is the Torah. That's Leviticus 23. So I think it's in there. Then we talked about Noah's model because it's in the days of Noah, right? And there's general warnings like the 120 years, 3 sets of 40, there are 3 judgments, plus 120 is also, and Gematria is what? God's,
Study of numbers.
yeah. And 120 would be a new beginning. Yeah, how many disciples were in the upper room? 120. That was a new beginning right at the church. Obviously, Moses, he died at 120, right? That was a new beginning because then Moses, the law dies, and it's Joshua or Yeshua or Jesus that leads him in the promised land. So, and then the actual ark itself is a sign, right? Because as it's being built and it's getting closer to completion, just like the parable of the fig tree, right? You know that as it starts to blossom and stuff, that it's getting near. Now, and also there's one specific warning in the days of Noah. What is it? Anybody remember? He gave us the exact time of the flood. And you know this one, Bill.
Methuselah.
Yes. Methuselah. Yeah, when he dies, it shall come.
His death will bring.
His death will bring. And so, if you calculate his age, and when he, you know, And when the flood happened,
969 years.
yes, longer than anyone else. He died the year of the flood. He died the year of the flood. So he gave us an actual, and my own theory is he died the day and the hour, when he died, that very hour, it started to rain. Yeah, that's what I think. Okay, now, so let's now go, we're going to talk about the day and hour, quick review, Matthew 24:36 and Mark 13:32. Okay, now this is where if you can't get past this, then the rest of this you can just throw away. Because this is so important. And both of those say that no man knows the day and the hour. Okay? Remember when we took all that stuff in context and went through it?
Yes.
And anybody can do that on their own. And all I say is, don't come in with any preconceived notions. Just read it for what the text says. And you will understand. And we're going to prove it again from a different angle. That no man knows the day or the hour. Okay? And in fact, someone read Revelation 3:3. Someone read Revelation 3:3. This is part of Jesus' 7 letters to 7 churches. And it also turns out to be, so it's definitely written to a church during the church age. This is written around 90 to 100 AD. Yes.
Be watchful and strengthen the things which remain that are ready to die. For I have not found your works perfect before God. Remember therefore how you have received and heard. Hold fast and repent. Therefore, if you will not watch, I will come upon you as a thief, and you will not know what hour I will come upon you. And that's the dead church, the dead last days church.
No, that's Laodicea. That's the only thing, and that comes later in the chapter. So he tells one of the churches, I don't even know what it, maybe Thyatira or
It's Sardis.
Sardis, okay, which actually means those escaping. It represents the Reformation Church.
Mm-hmm,
Okay,
that's
when we
right.
get into that.
The Protestant church, yeah.
The Protestant church. So he's saying to be watchful, basically. And what do? Be watchful for Jesus' return. He says, if you're not, you won't know the hour that I will return. Now here's my question. Think of it this way, logically. Does that mean if we're watchful that we will know the hour?
Yep.
Yeah.
Because the punishment is, if you're not going to watch, you won't know the hour. Isn't that weird? Doesn't he come right out there and say, you will know the hour?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, I'm saying with all those together, those all indicate to me that we won't know, the hour. And he's talking to the church. All right. Now, in these 2 scriptures, he says, no man knows the day or the hour, not, the Son of Man, not the angels, but the Father only. All right. Now, let's look at them all in context. Remember when we went through all that, they ask him, when is the time of the end, the sign of your coming, one of these things will be. If you go in Matthew 24, 4 through 31, okay, that's the whole tribulation period. All right, because he's answering the question of, when the end will be, everything else, okay? So Matthew 24, I'm going to open my Bible because I want to maybe skim over some of the passages. All right. Well, you guys should know Matthew 24 and 25 and Mark 13 and Luke 21 pretty good by now. Mm-hmm. We gone over ad nauseum, but it's really good because then you get all 3 accounts of the, Olivet Discourse on the end times. It's the most substantial discourse on the end times. Now, okay, so if we go to Matthew 24, of course, he starts off answering the questions about the end times. See that no one misleads you. And we talked about that great deception. Mm-hmm. And you go through all the stuff that's going to happen. Verse 8, all the stuff, the wars, famine, earthquakes. He said that's the beginning of birth pangs. I showed you that chart, which I think that's the first half of the tribulation. Anyways, doesn't matter. Then they will deliver you to tribulation, will kill you, be hated by all on my account. Many will fall away. It gets down to 14. and it's the whole tribulation period, all the way to the end. He says, and the gospel of this kingdom shall be preached to the whole world for a witness to all nations, and then the end shall come. So 4 to 14 is the whole 7-year tribulation, right? Okay. Then in Matthew 24:15, he goes back to the midpoint because it's the significant event. And I'll do my famous little chart here. And if you see this enough, it'll just stick in your head. 1260 days on this side, right? 1260 days on that side, and right in the very center, according to which scripture do we know it occurs there?
Daniel.
Ooh, man, you guys are.
9:25.
Can you imagine as we begin this study? If you could see this video, it's like, did we know that? Seriously. How many Christians could answer that? So, this is the abomination of desolation and we know from Daniel 9:27. Remember, it's 24 through 27. But remember, 9:24 gives you this whole 70 weeks. In fact, it's literally 77s, or it's 70 times 7. Does that phrase sound familiar?
Yep.
From where?
Matthew 8.
How many times do I need to forgive?
Yeah.
70 times.
I don't think Jesus just drummed up that thing. Believe me, it's all connected.
Yeah.
So he's going to deal with the Jewish nation, and he's going to deal with them with 77s and bring them back to repentance. That was the timetable he gave them to bring them back to forgiveness and repentance with 77s. And when he asked them, how many times I forgive my brother? 70 times 7. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
It blows my mind. So right here's the chart. Right in the middle, according to Daniel 9:27, and then in the middle of the week, or in the midst of the week, literally right in the center of the week, it says he. Who's the he? The Antichrist. Okay? He's going to sign, first he signs the covenant committee, in the middle of it he breaks it, and sets up the abomination of desolation. Right there. And there's one, I wish I could find it. I ran across it. I thought I wrote it down. There's actually one translation that says literally he's going to set up the abomination of desolation in the temple, which is exactly what happens. So right there is the abomination of desolation 9:27. So what he does in Matthew, in verses 4 through 14, he covers the whole gamut, all 7 years, top. Then he goes back to this, and he goes here. Because it's this last half that he says in Daniel 12 and later on in Matthew 24 that it's the worst time ever. At the time of greatest tribulation. Think about all the bad times. So that's why this is, the great tribulation in the second half. Because it's exactly 1,260 days. So that's why he comes back to the abomination of desolation. Says, hey, you see that? Flee to the mountains, you who are in Judea. And then that second half is the great tribulation. And as we go through all that, he talks about all kinds of stuff. False Christ, false prophets arise. And then there's going to be one final false Christ and one final false prophet of Revelation 13 that will arise. Right? Okay. Now, and then he talks about, and I'm not going to go over this in too much detail because I'll be here all night again. And then he finally comes back in verse 31. He says this. Well, in verse 30. And then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky, and all the tribes of the earth will mourn when they see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of the sky with great power and glory. All right? So, from Matthew 24, 4 through 14, is the 7-year tribulation. Okay? Then he stops and he goes back to verse 15, 24:15, which is the abomination of desolation, all the way through, his return, which is like, we'll say through 31. Okay? And that's the second half, or the 3.5 years. That's the great tribulation. So he's just going back and recounting the worst part of it, okay? So have we mentioned rapture? Not that I can see. Okay. And then he says this. He says, now learn the parable in verse 32. Now learn the parable from the fig tree when its branch has already become tender and put forth its leaves. You know that summer is near. And again, he's not talking about his rapture. He's talking about the second coming. Even so, when you see all these things, recognize that he's near, right at the door. Now, in verse 33, when he says, when you see all these things, what does that refer to? All these things. My question is, all what things?
The things he just mentioned, from 4 through
Yes.
31.
Yes. From 4 all the way to 31. The whole tribulation period and all that. He's saying, when you see all these things, okay, know that he's near, right at the door. Again, we're not talking rapture here, are we? Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but our words shall not pass away. Verse 36. But of that day and hour, what day and hour?
The second coming.
Yeah. When you see all these things, you know, happening, you know that he's near right at the door. But no man knows the day or the hour. Keep it in context. That's got to refer to the second coming. No rapture yet, right?
Right.
No rapture that I can see. For the coming of the Son of Man will be just like the days of Noah. You know, the flood comes, one taken, one left. And then he even goes in the analogy that, well, there's 2 men in the field, one taken, one left, okay? And then, again, we're still on the second coming. Now, I'll stop right there. I'm going to act like, I'm going to go back to my time machine, how many years ago? 30 years ago. And I'm going to read it like I used to read it. Verse 36. But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son of Man, but the Father alone. Now remember, I don't believe this what I'm about to teach. Now right there we see a change of subject. Okay? A disconnect. Up to now, he's talking about the tribulation and his visible return as lightning flashes from the east and west, okay? But now, he's going to reveal something else. The day and hour no one knows. Now, we know that can't be the second coming. You know why? Because once the tribulation period starts, well, don't we know the exact number of days? Then we would know the day and the hour, right? So that's clue number 1, that he's not talking about the
Second coming.
second coming. He's talking about the rapture. Okay? And plus, let's read on. For the coming of the Son of Man would be just like the days of Noah. For just in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, they were marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark. And they did not understand that the flood came and took them all away. So shall the coming of the Son of Man be. Now look at that. Days of Noah, they're eating and drinking. Do you think they're going to be eating and drinking and living a careless ease just before Jesus returns? Huh?
I don't
During the
think so.
tribulation period? No. Heavens no. It couldn't be. So it has to refer to the rapture, not the second coming. Because if it was the second coming, they wouldn't have careless ease. Okay? Now you start to follow my reasoning, okay? Plus, let's see what happens during that time. He says, there shall be 2 men in a field. One shall be taken, one shall be left. Now, that's got to be the rapture. Right? One taken, one left. All right? So, and I go through all that. Then he goes into a parable, which I won't go into. So you see my line of reasoning, right? And it does kind of make sense, doesn't it? It does kind of make sense. Except for a few things. Number 1, the church has not been revealed up to this point. Okay? And so, if the church has not been revealed, then the rapture could not have been revealed. And in fact, in 1 Corinthians
15.
good. The resurrection chapter, right? And also the rapture chapter, because at the rapture, what happens? A resurrection.
Resurrection.
Yeah.
No resurrection.
15, 51 through 52. He reveals the rapture as a what?
Mystery.
Yes.
Mystery.
It's a mystery. What is a mystery? A mystery is something that's unknown, that's veiled, that's not revealed. But when he reveals a mystery, he's unveiling something that was not known. So it's not until years later, after the gospel and after the church starts, that Paul starts talking about the church and their place in everything, that he reveals the mystery of the rapture. So that's my case number one. He couldn't be. Number two, every verse before that little section refers to the second coming. Every verse after refers to the second coming. And all of a sudden you have this change of subject. And every pastor that I asked said, yep, that's exactly what happens. I'm like, really? You know, and seriously. And nobody could explain to me why. And it was, well, because once they're, you know. And I'm going to explain that one. I'm not going to explain it now. Because it is a good question. Don't we know the exact end of it once it begins? Okay. And when I explain the reason to you why that's not valid, you're going to go, I can't believe that was so easy. But sometimes when you're looking through things through a glass that you've seen all your life one way, you know what I'm saying? It's like, it's got to be that.
Yeah.
But if you're open to the truth, you will see that it's not that. Okay? So am I making sense so far?
Yes.
So what about the Noah's flood analogy, careless ease and stuff? That's because the whole judgment is not Jesus coming back. He comes back at the end of that flood, at the end of that judgment. It represents the whole tribulation period. It's the careless ease before the tribulation period that happens. Okay? And then lastly, the one taken, one left is a rapture. But it's not the Christian rapture. It's the rapture of the wicked. And I'm going to show you that later too. Okay? So don't worry. I'm putting it on hold, but I'm just telling you now, it's where the wicked are raptured to where? Remember I told you guys?
Armageddon.
Armageddon.
Yeah.
For judgment.
Yeah, for judgment. One taken, one left. And we know that is that. Why? Because when we go to the book, I believe it's Luke, when he says, one's taken, one's left, the disciples ask him a question. Anybody remember what that question was?
Where?
Where? Now, wouldn't that answer the question? Yeah. And the answer is where
The vultures.
the vultures are, there the corpses will be.
Where the vultures are there, the corpses will be.
Yeah. That sounds like Armageddon. Because after the bloodbath, the vultures are called to come and eat on the bodies. You know, eat this up. So, and again, and you might think, man, that's kind of weird that there's more than one rapture. Actually, when we get to it in my notes, there's like about 7 raptures in the Bible. You might say, off the top of my head, can anyone tell me a rapture in the Bible? Enoch. Was he raptured?
Yes.
He walked with God and he was not, for God took him. What's another rapture? Elijah. Yeah, Elijah. So we shouldn't be just like, what are you talking about, another rapture? Well, there were raptures before. Yes.
John, when he was on Patmos.
Yes. There you go. He saw in Revelation 4:1. I know it's 4:1. It's easy to remember. Why?
Because it's the rapture chapter.
Yeah.
Because I was taken into heaven.
Because that occurs after, get this, I really got this down, Revelation 2 and 3. Comes Revelation 4. But what's Revelation 2 and 3?
The
About the
churches.
churches.
The church age. So at the very end of the 7 churches, which I'm going to show you are 7 church ages, the whole complete history of the church,
Makes sense.
John, he looks up to heaven, what does he see? A door. Notice anytime Jesus returns, the rapture, second coming, he's always at a door. It's a portal. Probably a multi-dimensional portal. Who knows? He's raptured up to there. Okay? And I really think that God is telling something. So then we go, so Revelation 1's the introduction of John on Patmos. He sees the vision of Jesus. 2 and 3 is the church age. 4 and 5 is the church up in heaven. And then 6 through 19 is the tribulation period. And actually 6 through 18 and then 19 would be the return of Christ. 20 would be the millennial kingdom. Okay? So, there is a pattern to Revelation. A pattern. And everyone think, oh, it's so confusing. If anyone tells you, Daniel 9:24 through 27, the 70 weeks of prophecy, who knows what that means? And they're supposed to be a pastor or something? Oh, man. You know, because if you come from certain theological bents or systems, they are a mystery to you. You don't know what they mean. You're completely confounded. Well, they can mean anything. So God wrote us this information and it could mean anything? I don't think so. I think that it means something specific. Yes?
When are they supposed to rebuild the temple?
When are they supposed to rebuild the temple?
That's before the rapture, right?
It depends. I
it's
think
after.
I think that when the Antichrist comes, he signs the 7-year covenant with Israel, and it deals with sacrifices and offerings. Okay? It's a 7-year covenant, which is exactly the 7-year tribulation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you would think, well, doesn't the temple have to be up? Not technically.
They start building it at the beginning of the tribulation period.
Yeah. And you could actually have certain sacrifices and offerings going on. I remember listening to one prophetic.
So it's after the rapture.
It could. It could start tomorrow. Well, actually, the Antichrist is not on the scene, so no.
I believe
Start
it's
that.
after the rapture.
Yeah. And it probably is after the rapture because that's going to bring about a lot of changes. And according to one prophetic Hebraic teacher I was listening to, he was talking to a rabbi. And the rabbi just mentioned to him, yeah, once we start building the temple until completion, when you go through all the sacrifices and dedications, you know how long he said it would take?
3.5 years
3.5 years.
from the Jews.
Hello? And when does the abomination of desolation occur?
3.5 years. Right when they're doing the dedication.
Right there.
Wow.
And I will tell you, that's the 10th of Nisan. I won't explain why I know that. It's the feast template. I'm going to apply a feast template where you can go back and figure the days. Remember, Elisheba, once you understand the Jewish calendar, you come up with the days. It's the 10th of Nisan. Now, why is that significant? The 10th of Nisan, that he finishes the temple and he offers the abomination of desolation.
Is that when it was destroyed before? Is that when it was destroyed previously?
No,
Okay.
no, it was destroyed on the 9th of
Ah,
Av,
that's
Tisha
right.
B'Av. The first temple was destroyed on that. The second temple was destroyed on it. You go through every disaster in Jewish history was Tisha B'Av or the 9th of Av. We're talking about 3.5 years. So if it starts right here, he signs a covenant with them. They could do sacrifices for 3.5 years as they're building the temple. According to this one rabbi, it would take him, and he doesn't know anything about this. He just says it would take 3.5 years to build. It's like, man. Oh, back to that date. It's the 10th of Nisan, which is, get this, here's why it's significant. The abomination of desolation happens in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 happens, where the man of sin, the son of perdition, goes into the very temple of God, sitting himself and displaying himself as God. And that is the lie that you're going to be given over to if you don't accept the love of the truth. Okay? Here's why that day is significant. It's because that was the day that Jesus rode into Jerusalem, presenting himself as the Mashiach Nagi. In other words, he came and said, I'm your king, and they rejected him. What did he say in John? Another should come, I'll come in my Father's name and you reject me. Another should come in his own name and him you'll accept. Right here.
Where's that and what?
In John 8, I think.
Yes.
Right off the top of my head. So you see how it all adds together? The very day that Jesus presented himself to the nation as the Messiah is the same time that the Antichrist is going to come and present himself
How do you
to the
know
Messiah.
that again, Noah?
Huh?
Explain again. How do you know that? That's the 10th year of the Nisan.
Oh,
Nisan.
10:30. That's the teaser that I'm going to give you because you won't be back next week if I tell you
Oh, yeah,
now.
that's true.
Okay. No, actually, no. The next section is when we get into the feast, and you'll see how it all shakes out. It'll take too long for me to explain.
Okay.
But I'm saying once you go into the feast template, you have the exact holiday it starts on.
Okay.
You have the exact holiday that it ends on, and then you know it's 30-day months and that it's 360-day years. And if you know the exact holiday it goes on, you know exactly what day it lands on in the very middle.
Wow.
And ironically,
Wow. That's
just to throw a little tidbit in, the two witnesses, Moses and Elijah, they lay in the streets of Jerusalem for 3.5 days, right? They only have power for 1,260 days. Okay? And so where do they land? They have to land in this first half. There's a very simple reason why. According to Revelation 13, the devil gives his power and authority to the Antichrist right here. And that's when he overcomes him. they lay in the streets of Jerusalem 3.5 days, and this is going to be so apropos of what we're going to do, is the Passover. They are resurrected on the Passover. Okay? Now, if you figure all that out, who are the two main characters in the Passover? Besides Jesus, I mean human characters.
Elijah.
Well, obviously Moses. It's all about the Exodus and his deliverance. And who do you set a place for?
Elijah.
Elijah. The two major characters in the Passover, Moses and Elijah. And they're resurrected on the Passover? When you use the feast temple, you see what I'm saying? It'll curl your hair when you go through all this. I'm serious. It's so
Already, huh?
obvious that this is it. No man knows it. I don't want you to be tripped up by that. And that's why I'm going to explain. Well, once we start, don't we know the exact date? I want to explain that. Because that really, deserves explaining. Because you have to understand it. So we see that read in context that it has to refer to the second coming.
Not the
Yes.
rapture.
Not the rapture, okay? So, next time what we're going to do is we're going to go at the end of Matthew 24. Oh, I'm sorry. I saw her go. I thought she was like cheering or something. Yeah. Well, thanks, but
10th of Nisan.
yeah.
What is Nisan?
Oh, that's the first month. Okay. So that's the first month. So that's Passover. First month, all that stuff. So as we go through all that, you're going to see so many things add up. It's silly. You go to the 335-day prophecy of Daniel, and there, I think it's in Daniel 12. We're going to do that. It's from the abomination of desolation, and it goes past the end of his return. It's like everybody's like, what does that mean? If you keep following it, it lands on a Jewish holiday. That exactly tells you why he gave that prophecy. This is after Jesus is crucified, take out the church age.
Right, that's what
and
I
go
meant.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
And it just continues and flows.
Yeah.
But
So why wouldn't we be dealing with the,
Tribulation.
no, why wouldn't we be dealing with the feast dates? Because they were so important and they're a
Yes.
whole year. You can't just put them aside because we're the church.